Watts, 10 News. Up to 8 drivers a day in Canberra are being caught in unregistered cars.
1206 2CC.
Australia's jobless rate has hit a 4-year high, with more than 50,000 full-time jobs vanishing over the past month. The national unemployment rate in February soared to 5.2%, in the biggest monthly rise since the 1991 recession.
It's a very stressful thing. I've got 4 children, and it's one at high school and 3 younger ones.
The opposition says the government has failed workers, including these Foster's employees retrenched today, and the latest job figures are a worrying sign of worse to come.
47,000 more unemployed. So much for Labor's policies creating jobs.
But the government has defended its role, saying its $10.4 billion stimulus package was cushioning the impact.
Had the government sat back and done nothing and just watched, then the unemployment numbers produced today would be much worse.
Unemployment leapt in every state except Tasmania, with a massive 53,800 full-time jobs disappearing. Employers are restructuring their workforces, and there's predictions the jobless rate could surge past 7% next year. Saving jobs isn't the only thing on Kevin Rudd's mind, with the economy facing further pressure from changes to workplace laws and a pay rise for pensioners. Experts are now saying it's only a matter of time before the economy officially starts going backwards.
The Great Recession, from which no nation, including Australia, is immune.
The Prime Minister will meet US President Barack Obama later this month before heading to the G20 summit. Brad Watts, 10 News. The federal government has been left red-faced after its economic stimulus payments have gone to thousands of dead people and Australians living overseas. A new report has found 1.5 million Centrelink customers were dead and more than 7,000 people have shared a tax file number. Brad Watts, 10 News. Form regular artillery into guided bombs, using sophisticated wings to extend their range. 6 local engineering companies are also involved in developing high-tech wares for 100 Joint Strike Fighters. The stealth combat aircraft, worth around $16 billion, are set to replace Australia's ageing fighter fleet in 2012.
That's the biggest single defence procurement in global history, and we want to make sure that Victorian and Australian companies are able to play a role in delivering some of the systems.
To ensure that does happen, the state government invested $700,000 in a new body to give the industry a better plan of attack.
That'll mean more investment, it'll mean more jobs, it'll mean more opportunities.
The new initiative will also bolster the chances of other Victorian aerospace manufacturers to win global contracts in the highly competitive defence market.
Its strength is going to be in coordinating the bids from across a whole range of companies in Victoria and potentially Australia.
Other contracts to be pursued by the company include the air warfare destroyers and amphibious troop-carrying ships for the Australian Navy, which will soon be put to tender by the federal government. Brad Watts, 10 News. With the growing threat of terrorist attacks, emergency services are preparing for large-scale disaster, but trauma specialists say our major hospitals would struggle to cope.
There is an opportunity to improve, and if you have an opportunity to improve, there must be areas that are currently deficient.
Doctors want a coordinated national trauma plan backed by the federal government, more intensive care beds and trauma specialists. Australia has around 7 intensive care beds per 100,000 people. The United States has 32.
It needs to have a more robust day-to-day trauma system that will allow the treatment of major disaster victims.
Victoria's Alfred Hospital is one of 16 major trauma centres across Australia. 46-year-old Greg Donoghue was airlifted there after suffering a punctured heart when a tree fell on his truck.
Every second I breathe now is owed to these doctors.
He's just awoken from a 12-day coma.
In other settings he would not have survived.
Recent improvements to Victoria's trauma care system means nearly 80% of trauma patients undergo emergency treatment, and that's resulted in nearly a 30% reduction in avoidable deaths.
But now we need to move to the next stage in the delivery of healthcare.
Doctors predict the national plan will cost $500,000 to draw up and more than $100 million to implement. Brad Watts, 10 News. They're extremely cute and cuddly.
Oh yes, clever puppy.
But these forward-legged customs officers serve a vital role in the war on terror and drugs.
They certainly are soldiers, and we're very proud of their efforts.
Around 100 Labrador pups are being trained in firearms, explosives and drug detection at Melbourne's Customs Centre, the only one in Australia. But they're crying out for more foster parents to help complete their training. Since September 11, the dogs have been in demand worldwide. And these little pups are now being trained to work in the US, Japan and Bosnia.
This centre is recognised as a world leader in this particular craft, so we help where we can.
70% of sniffer dogs work in the military or for federal police. Anyone can apply to be a puppy carer, and their food, vaccinations and training equipment is all provided. But they need plenty of regular exercise, so long as they enjoy a hard-earned rest at the end of the day. Taking a close look at our region now, and it's mostly cloud-free up the top here, apart from these patchy high cloud areas, which would extend right across to Victoria, but there'd be no rain at all there. Looking at the prognosis now, and that large high-pressure system here moving slowly eastwards tomorrow, with winds shifting northerly later in the day, and the possibility of light rain in the southeast.
Digital, online, 1206 2CC News.
It's midday, 17 degrees in Canberra, heading for a top of 19. Good afternoon, Brad Watts with Capital Radio News. Up to 8 drivers a day in Canberra are being caught in unregistered cars or without a licence. The alarming figures were released by ACT Police this morning in a newspaper report. The figures also show drivers have racked up more than $500,000 in traffic fines. Welcome to the Seabull Heritage Hotel and Country Club here in the picturesque Yarra Valley of Victoria. This is our venue for the Australian Food and Grocery Council Highlands 2011 Senior Executive Forum. This year we have more than 120 of the leading food and grocery executives, as well as a number of international guests. They'll be talking about a range of issues relating to food and grocery manufacturing and talking about the theme of winning tomorrow's consumer. Let's take a look.
4867. Brad Watts, 1206 2CC.
Well, it is about 14 minutes, coming to 14 minutes past 11. Now, I know as Canberrans, we love to get down the coast. The South Coast has some fantastic attractions. And I was lucky enough to get down there a couple of weeks ago to the Narooma Oyster Festival. It was fantastic. A lot of Canberrans heading down there, seafood lovers, and I was just blown away by the hospitality and the seafood on offer down there. I went down there with my wife and we tasted a whole range of fantastic seafood, including the local oysters. And at their festival, I think it's an annual thing now. They're getting people from far and wide coming through. They sold more than, I think, 22,000 oysters, which is a lot of oysters over a couple of days. And I think more than 7,500 people attended there on the Waggonga Inlet. Plenty of Canberrans coming down to enjoy the festivities. So if you're up for a bit of a trip this weekend or looking to do something a little bit different, head down to Narooma. There's some fantastic things happening